Now today's seminar, the scope of today's seminar is we will be spending time in chapters 11, 12, and 22 of ASCE 710. Now I'm sure most of you know that chapters 11 through 23 are where the seismic provisions are found. Because of our time limitation and where the majority of the changes are found, we're dedicating our time today to these three chapters. We'll be discussing chapters 11 and 22 together because one of the most significant changes in the seismic provisions, if not the most significant change, are the new maps. There are new seismic maps in ASCE 710. We do devote some time to discuss why we have the new maps. The new maps are found in chapter 22, but they're referenced in chapter 11, and that's why we discuss the two chapters together. And then the second half of the seminar will be dedicated to the changes found in chapter 12. The structural engineer finds themselves in chapters 11 and 12 most of the time when applying the seismic provisions. In this slide here, we show all of the different chapter titles that relate to the seismic provisions in ASCE 710. The red chapter titles are what we'll be covering. And then you can see the other chapter titles that we will not be covering. Non-structural components, chapter 13, we have a separate web seminar on with the non-building structures chapter 15 changes. So that's a recorded seminar that we've offered a number of times, and many of you may have attended that. So we've covered those two chapters through a web seminar. Now with respect to the changes in the other chapters, what we would refer you to for now is this publication right here. And this publication is a great reference book whenever you're scratching your head about a change between 05 and 10 provisions. You can just look it up in here. It provides you with an explanation and an illustration. And so for those chapters that we're not able to cover on the web seminars, you could say the script, if there were a web seminar, would be found in this book here. All right, now we'll go ahead and start discussing the changes in chapter 11. And I'm seeing here this red text here, and we had red text in a previous slide too. I should have mentioned it there, that this is just an editorial change that we've taken the liberty of incorporating in the text that we're repeating here to make it more complete. And another thing we do with our slides is we use underline to show new language, where there's been new language added from ASCE 705. So this slide here is a motherhood and apple pie type statement in chapter 11 up front, just telling you what you need to do when designing your structure for seismic loads. And it makes reference to these different chapters right here. But it's here in section 11.1.3 that we find the new language in ASCE 710. And we show it here with the underline. And let's go ahead and read it together. Buildings whose purpose is to enclose equipment or machinery and whose occupants are engaged in maintenance or monitoring of that equipment, machinery, or their associated processes shall be permitted to be classified as non-building structures designed and detailed in accordance with section 15.5 of this standard. So this is a welcome change for those of you that are involved in the design of industrial buildings. There is some discussion about this new provision in the commentary, and it identifies these industrial buildings or these buildings where occupants are engaged in maintenance or monitoring as boiler buildings, aircraft hangars, steel mills, and other automated manufacturing facilities. But I think the umbrella classification would be industrial buildings. So if you fall under that classification, you are permitted to go to chapter 15 and design your building in accordance with the non-building structure provisions of chapter 15. This allows you to use systems which are allowed to have unlimited height. You will not find these same systems in table 12.2-1. There'll be restrictions on the height. And with industrial buildings, the height can get rather high, and so it's a welcomed change to be able to use Chapter 15 with those systems that are permitted to have unlimited height. Now we're going to see this language here used again in Chapter 12 a little bit later on in the seminar. So know that we will see this language once again as it relates to another provision in Chapter 12.